Hello everyone, welcome back to another art time lapse. Today I'm doing an original piece that I'm aiming to submit for the Bologna scholarship. So come along with me as I bring you through the art process of how I go from a blank canvas to a fully finished piece of this called Trip Through the Forest. So this piece I originally intended to submit as an illustrator scholarship application to the SCBWI, which stands for the Society of Children's Books Writers and Illustrator. So I was gonna apply for the illustrator scholarship to see if there would be opportunity I can travel to Bologna Book Fair and showcase some of my artwork. I wasn't really sure if my art style is suited for it. I'm not confident at all if it's even a possibility that I should even venture into, but I was really grateful to a friend who encouraged me to just try it. What's the harm in just trying it? And I thought that sure, let's take a risk and do a piece that kind of accentuates my art style and tells a visual story at the same time. So this drawing is intended to be full color, intended for a picture book for kids from 4 to 7. Unfortunately, by the time I finished this piece, it was well beyond the deadline, which is fine. I think I just really enjoyed the process of putting this piece together, that I didn't want to rush it just to meet the scholarship deadline. So I thought it was okay. So as you can see from this piece here, it's pretty watered down with a lot of gouache. You probably have no idea what I'm trying to paint at this point, except that you already know that the plot title has to trip through the forest. So we'll see how this goes. I think so much about an art piece is also about the process of how we get there to that end product of that beautiful artwork that you see. There is just so much of a story to tell on how you go from 0 to let's say 100, that I thought a YouTube video will be a great way to showcase that process. I think even for my children, as they see that I do artwork on the side, from time to time, they know that I don't go from 0 to a beautiful piece just out of nowhere. A lot of it takes practice, a lot of it takes experiments, and it doesn't always turn out the way I want it to. And I hope that my children will have the grit and the perseverance to kind of push through that and push through those uncomfortable situations so they can land in a whole new level and see the horizon from a brand new light. So hopefully that is my grand scheme of my plan for some of my artwork and my art time lapses that you're seeing here. So here you can see the forest slowly emerging from the piece. I started off with a white and yellow glowing background because I wanted light to shine through and peer through the trees, and then I was going to work on the silhouettes for the trees afterwards. It's turning out quite nice. I wasn't sure if I was going a little bit overboard with the number of details that you see with the branches and the trunks that come out from it. Certainly did take a lot of work to kind of stage where all the trees were going to be, how the branches were going to deviate and create gaps of light. I tend to overpaint a lot of my artwork, and I do too many details and don't know when to stop. So this piece is a very good test for me to be more patient with the process and making sure I leave gaps in between so you can see some of the layers that build over time. Of course, as you have probably ascertained to already, I mentioned that I never finished this piece in time for the competition, and that's because I think I maybe aimed to do more than I had initially intended. It was supposed to be a very light-hearted piece that was just simple silhouettes, but once I got to painting the piece, I realized, I really want to add more details to the leaves. I want to show the textures and the colors for the trunk, that it never aspired exactly to what I wanted to by the end of I guess the week, because that was the timeline I gave myself to finish the piece. And at the same time, I remember my kids not feeling too well around the holidays and just had to dedicate more time to my family, and that's okay. So I never ended up submitting this piece for it. So it wasn't until I think it was 2 to 3 months later that I actually got to sit down and finish the piece, but pretty happy with how it turned out. I think initially, as you can see, it's a darker piece, maybe a little bit too ominous for a children's book. I think that my kids like things a little bit more lighthearted. I find that when I use like cooler color scheme, they tend not to like it as much and find it a little bit scary, but they're a little bit on the younger side. They're around 2 to 3 years old right now. But I think that like that is the color scheme that I really like to play around with, whereas my kids really like warmer tone color scheme. But for this trip through the forest, I intend for the audience to walk through the forest, feeling the cool forest, feeling like the light glow that gleams from the cracks of the trees that would come through. And then here you can see I'm starting to add the textures for the trunk of the tree, which took a lot of time. I actually did enjoy it very much. This is actually the first layer for the texture. Subsequently, I'll add on more layers with like different colors. A lot of times I find do the art time lapse, it makes it look a little bit effortless and just doesn't take as much time. But like you can see here, as I'm slowing down to real time, this is actually me considering painting fast, filling in the space here. But I love how as I'm adding the textures, these like parallel lines that warp and bend around the trees just feels so natural. And then here, just doing the background, I wanted it to have a clear path so the audience can see that you can take a walk through this forest into like a distant destination rather than just like aimlessly. There's just a lot of trees that are just like planting themselves throughout the forest. There is a path, there is a way. It's not as clear initially, and I like that, how like not every path in life is going to be paved for you, and there are many paths that you will have to pave yourself, but there are like light to guide you here and there. It's not completely a blind path. Now I'm adding on some of the leaves, and I didn't want to do like green emerald leaves. I want it to be like a little bit mid-autumn, adding in some yellows here. I think the yellows and blues and greens are just like a beautiful color combination. I've tried this color combination a number of times and really do struggle with it because like it's just not very natural for me, because like yellow and oranges are a little bit warmer colors, so I struggle a little bit with it. Here I'm just filling in the trees, making sure I don't add too much that you can't see the gaps in between. And then also like for the ground on the forest itself, just adding a little bit of texture. So from here, I actually did a very poor job of capturing my process. So you can see that there's a little bit of gap, and you notice like, hey, how did I get from here to there? And that's because I'm just not very good at documenting. I'll try to be better. But you can see a white kind of like ghost like figure that's appearing in the forest. There's actually a fox spirit that I wanted to reside in the forest that is guiding you through that walk. Here, just adding in details for that fox. I have to overlay a little bit of white paint where the character would be before adding colors, or else like I find that the colors just don't have that type of impact, or it tends up to be a little bit more, the colors are not as distinct. So that's like a tip I would recommend for you to consider if you're adding in the figure afterwards. Here is the finished piece. There's like this nice ray of light that's just kind of glowing from outside the window. I'll try to move my artwork away from it, but I actually like the dimension and like that aspect that was added to it. So you can see as I run my fingers through it, you can see the light moves across my fingers, and just playing around the light, how the light can shine through the forest. But without the light, this is how the piece looked like. Well, thank you so much for joining me on this art time lapse on Trip Through the Forest. I hope you enjoyed it. I certainly did. And with that said, thank you so much, and I will see you next time in another video. Stay safe and stay creative, everyone. Bye for now.